Stay with the theme of rotten apples. It is a Monday, time for Political View, a wrap of the latest political developments. And of course, the fallout continues after the release of an explosive report into the collapse of VBS Mutual Bank. An advocate who penned the report, Terry Motau, details how an estimated 2 billion rand was stolen from the bank, recommending that more than 50 people be charged. He found that municipal officials were bribed to ensure that municipalities deposited large sums into the bank. Motau finds the bank was also looted by the chair and those close to him, and ultimately it was liquidated. It could not pay depositors. The list of those implicated is long, including KPMG as well as the brother of EFF Deputy President Floyd Shivambu, Brian Shivambu. Brian Shivambu denying he received anything from the bank. Floyd Shivambu saying that claims that he received 10 million are false. He has spoken to the SABC. The PIC is also mentioned in the report, and the Mail and Guardian has been looking into other possible links. To discuss, we're joined by Mail and Guardian investigative journalist Sabelo Skiti. Great to have you with us, Sabelo.
Good evening, Francis, and good evening to the listeners.
Let's first start with the EFF. So they're going to do a press conference tomorrow to clear the fog. What are you expecting?
Well, I think I look forward to hearing what they have to say. I expect that the Commander-in-Chief is going to be in his usual very lively self. And is probably going to have some choice words for the media on this one. I think, well, getting to the nuts and bolts of it, they are probably going to explain, the relationship between the EFF and Brian Shivambu, who we understand at some stage was an employee of the organization, and they are probably going to seek to distance him and his business, with VBS and other, companies from the party itself and from the brother Floyd Shivambu. What you're likely to hear is, an attempt to sort of convince us that, some of the funds that did pass between the two were probably nothing more than brotherly loans that don't require any further scrutiny.
Which Floyd Shivambu has said. How strong is the evidence that Brian Shivambu, he has a case to answer because he's in the report taking money for no good reason, according to the SAB report. How strong is the evidence that that money was then channeled to Floyd Shivambu and the EFF?
Well, I look at the moment, that is something that a lot of, journalists are still looking into. There was, of course, the Daily Maverick article very late on Thursday afternoon, sort of, making, more definite claims about a specific amount of cash that passed, from the younger brother to the older brother. We've certainly seen no evidence of that, but I mean, that doesn't mean that it hasn't happened. From what we've seen, there definitely are strong indications that some of the money did go to Floyd Shivambu. And in fact, we hope, with the coming of time to show if there's any link, that's stronger between Floyd and his younger brother.
You are looking at the bigger picture as well, and you have these text messages purportedly between Floyd Shivambu and a businessman with links to the PIC. Explain why those are important.
Well, I mean, this is why, I was saying that we will be looking further and hope to uncover much more about Floyd's role, not only in defense of, the PIC and VBS, but also in terms of how much does or has he actually done on behalf of his brother in terms of that business. So the article, Francis, is very straightforward in the sense that we were able to get in evidence that has been given to Advocate Jeff Budlender, who is currently, doing a forensic investigation into PIC matters. Contained in this pack that he was given were text messages that show a communication between Mr. Shivambu, this is Floyd, and a businessman by the name of Lawrence Mulaudzi. Now, Mr. Mulaudzi is a very key player in the VBS saga, in that one of the main allegations against the VBS CEO, Dr. Dan Machila, involves Mr. Mulaudzi and the possibility of a 300,000 rand that was paid by Mr. Mulaudzi to another individual who is known and close to Dr. Dan, allegedly. Mr. Mulaudzi himself is also a beneficiary of some funding from the PIC, having received between 1.7 and 1.8 billion rand to purchase a stake in Total South Africa's BE vehicle. So what we saw there is that Mr. Shivambu, for some reason which we can't explain, and we place this to be sometime in March 2017, sends a text to Mr. Mulaudzi with his younger brother's business banking details. We assume that that must have been a request for money in one way or the other. There's been an explanation from Mr. Mlawuzi, who says that from time to time his company would engage Floyd Shivambu's younger brother's company. Of course, this company is called Grand Azania.
So the implication is money from a suspicious person may be paid to Brian Shivambu. Floyd Shivambu gave the bank account, so maybe he's using his brother as a conduit. Is that a stretch?
Well, I mean, look, from what we can definitely say right now is that there definitely seems to be links with, between PIC and VBS, not only in, what was uncovered by Advocate Motau, but also in, other individuals that have links to both organizations, Mr. Mlawuzi with the PIC and then Mr. Shivambu with VBS. And it seems as if the middleman for now is none other than Floyd Shivambu himself. Of course, Mr. Mlawuzi say he and Mr. Shivambu go back many years. They have a friendship that has gone back a couple of years.
And let's be clear, I mean, the evidence against Floyd Shivambu himself, it's not concrete, so these are claims. But what would be the motives? What power did he have in VBS? Are we talking about municipalities?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you want to go as far as to say, it's definitely municipalities. But if you look at Mr. Shivambu's stature in society and in politics, it definitely would not hurt to have an individual with, that considerable amount of power and influence batting for an organization which, we now know was, basically looting, state funds through VBS.
And the PIC is interesting. So Dan Magila, the CEO, was mentioned in the report. Somebody said that money was earmarked for him. I think it was Dr. Dan.
Yes.
But we have no knowledge of whether he received the money or knew about it. So,
yes.
So that's where we are in the report.
Yes, and of course, it's important to note that he himself is denying, any links to any cash that would have flowed from VBS to the PIC. But I think there's just too many question marks to let this go so easily, Francis. This is not the first sort of investment that the PIC has had, which can't be explained on a business perspective, and what you see then is that it's very clear that very little due diligence was done. If any had been done, the PIC would have seen the incredible risk in investing in an organization which was illegally holding funds that could not be deposited, that belong to municipalities.
Even bigger than that, it would mean Dan Magila was accepting bribes, but there's no evidence, just somebody saying that was just the intention, I guess.
Well, I mean, there's a lot more to come, from this VBS saga. It's important to note that right now, I would even go as far as to call this report preliminary, primarily because, as pointed out by the people that are implicated, no one has had a chance to come through yet and explain themselves. And of course, I mean, what we've seen of the report is more like a summary, because we've not seen the actual technical and the documents that back up the claims that are made by Advocate Motau. No doubt that all of that information is probably contained in whatever representations will be made to law enforcement agencies that can take this thing forward.
And then journalists have a bit of scope to investigate. I mean, there is political heat on the PIC already, although it's producing good returns. Like you said, so many questions. What is the potential fallout here for the PIC?
Well, I think whichever way, this penny drops this time around, there will be much more scrutiny on the PIC. This is not the first scandal in recent months. If you look back at, the issues around former Finance Minister Nhlanhla son, for instance, you've got the financing of, the technologies company Sakamata, IO Technology as well. You've got other links there's a lot of investments that the PIC has made in recent history that have come to cost it billions and billions of rands. So I think no matter what happens with the VBS matter, as far as the PIC go, there will definitely be much more scrutiny in terms of how do they go about making these investments, the due diligence that's supposed to take place.
And you're using documents that will be used by Jeff Budlender. Where is that? I mean, is this a potentially explosive investigation again?
Well, I mean, the Jeff Budlender investigation is a quite interesting one. So it begins as an investigation that's, looking into very clear allegations. allegations that involve Dr. Dan Machila and his relationship with a certain woman by the name of Pretty Low. This is the woman, of course, who is alleged to have had Dr. Dan ask for 300,000 rand for her from one of, the PIC investees. But the sort of information from what we've learned that has come out is definitely either going to widen the scope of Dr. Advocate Padlena's investigation, or it will certainly lead to him making, wider recommendations, of course, for that commission of inquiry that the president wants to take place at the PIC.
How implicated is the former president, Jacob Zuma? Reports coming out that he wasn't paying VBS for that very high-profile loan to deal with Nkandla?
Well, I think, if you look at the wider narrative about, how state institutions during his 2 terms as state president had become weakened, it's definitely something that you can always align to the Jacob Zuma administration. But he as an individual, of course, it's through that loan, that mortgage that he got from VBS, and the fact that it now seems that he wasn't servicing it. It's no surprise to some of us. At the time that was announced, you could see that it made no sense, because the man clearly, would not have received anything similar to that from any of the commercial banks.
Questions around creditworthiness.
Yes, of course. And then you saw in part of that 53 that were listed by Advocate Terry Motau, who is also a gentleman by the name of Sizwe Shezi, who also, has links to the Jacob Zuma Foundation, or was a former head of, the Jacob Zuma Education Trust. He was a former chair of that. So there definitely are many links that lead to Nkandla in this. And as I said, I think as time goes on and as we unpack the detail of what happened at VBS, you're likely to see more political players.
Right, so you're saying this is going to get bigger and bigger. What do you make of the current president's denial that he knew what was going on here?
Well, to be honest with you, when I saw the article on Sunday in the City Press, it sort of seemed to rely on a source that had heard from someone who was in the meeting. There was not enough for me sort of to say where was the meeting, what day was it. So I'm not surprised that the presidency, is coming out and saying they are not aware of this meeting and any information that had been given to the president. Of course, if you look at the implications of it, if it is true, it's quite damning for the president, because this is someone that allegedly brought you information pertaining to, a crime. And you did nothing, when there is an obligation for you, even as an ordinary citizen, then that you come across any instance where you know of criminal activity, you're obliged to report it. If you look at it from a political perspective, there are those people that will say they really don't trust this new Tumamina era of the ANC, because for many years Cyril Ramaphosa had been deputy president to Jacob Zuma, and up until very late in the Jacob Zuma administration was quite happy to sit back and look at a lot of strong allegations swirling around the president, swirling around senior ANC leaders and cabinet ministers.
And not resigning. That's for another day, but thank you for your analysis. So many implicated in the VBS saga. Mail and Guardian investigative journalist Sabelo Skiti suggesting that maybe down the line there will be even more.